Evet, Eylül Hanım'a bu duygulu konuşması için teşekkür ediyoruz. Aslında başta benden 1-2 dakika müsaade istemişti. Ben de vermiştim. Onu bile kullanmadı. Söyleyeceğini söyledi. Sağ olun. Efendim, en başta mürit iradesi olandır dedik. Mürit sonunda murat olur. İstenen olur. Büyük Mevlevi dedesi Şeyh Galip'in bir dörtlüğü burada hatırıma geldi. Ne diyor? Gelenler hankâh-ı evliyaya, bütün davetlidir galip safaya. Sakın zahirde kalma aldanırsın, komazlar yoksa gelmezler sanırsın. Epey açık ama bu evliya dergahına gelenlerin hepsi safaya, arınmaya, manevi arınmaya davetlidir. Onun için geliyorlar. Sen görünüşe bakma, aldanabilirsin. Niye bu insanlar gelmiyor diye üzülme. Komazlar, kabul etmezler. Sen kendileri mi gelmez zannediyorsun diyor. Böyle tam kritik yerde de Eylül Hanım burasına aklım ermez dedi, kesti. Burası da çok aklımızın ermeyeceği ama laflarıyla epey şey anlatan, evet, böyle bir dörtlükle konuyu tamamlamış oldum izninizle. Efendim, son konuşmacımız Helminski hanımefendi. Ben kendilerini İstanbul'daki sempozyumda ilk defa dinledim. O da son derece aşklı, muhabbetli bir insan. Benim tahsil yıllarımda geçerli yabancı dil Fransızcaydı. Ben de bir parça Fransızca biliyorum. İngilizce de bir türlü öğrenemedim. Onun için kendi dilinden konuşmasını dinleyemedim. Ama konuşurken vecdini, duygu derinliğini fark edebiliyorsunuz. Umarım aynı şeyleri burada da tekrarlayacaklardır. Mimikleri, yüz ifadesi, kısaca vücut diliyle çok şey anlatıyor. Tercümeden de bir parça takip etmeye çalışırsınız. Çok hoş, anlamlı da bir konu başlığı var. Kıyıya vuran inciler, Sultan Veled'den Allah'ın halife olma dersleri diyor. Buyurun Helminski Hanımefendi.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We'd like to begin by thanking our dear Jamal Nur Sargat and all the dear friends of TÜRKKAD and the Konya Büyükşehir Belediyesi and Culture and Tourism Ministry for bringing us all here and holding us so graciously under the light of the huzur of Hazreti Mevlana and Hazreti Shams and Hazreti Sultan Veled and all the awliya who have blessed us by bringing us here heart to heart. We give thanks for this beautiful tradition and for all the helpers who have come throughout the centuries to convey spirit and to encourage us also in that conveyance. We're grateful for these moments of being brought together to witness to those beauties of being. Many beauties of spirit have been conveyed by Sultan Bahauddin Muhammad Veled. Both stories of intimate moments with his father and the sharing of the secrets of Shamsi Tabriz and his own personal experiences. May many blessings of peace be with them all. And even though we may hear some of the same stories, inshallah, each time they are shared, we may go deeper and gain more and more nourishment from them. So we reflect here on some of the lessons conveyed by Sultan Veled as to how we might be true Khalifas of God, the birthright of every human being. He shares with us examples of standing witness before the infinite, witnessing to that infinite love and translating it, conveying it more fully into this existence with humility, beauty of character, and loving service. As it is said, wherever you turn, there is the face of God. And as Sultan Veled says in his Ma'arif, God did not create the universe and its forms for you to occupy yourself with these forms and fall in love with them, but he created them for you to know him. With that knowledge, we're enabled to stand in truth, witnessing to the majesty of that infinite grace and love of our sustainer, turning to serve his or her creation as a true Khalifa, representative of God, guardian of the trust of being, breath by breath, from the ocean of non-being, conveying pearls to the shore. We've been reminded of the moment Sultan Veled shares with us when his father came to him, asking him if he would like to see God, and how his father told him to begin with 10 days, and each day starting with 2 hours devoted to God, in service to God, in worship, each day to reduce the time we spend in the affairs of the world, increasing the moments of our devotion until all our time is immersed in service of God, contemplating the beloved. He says, inspired by my father's pure soul, I followed his instructions. It is as God said to Moses, his representative, if you are my faithful servant and try to please me, then I in turn will be for you as pleases you. Love said to me, set aside your flirtatiousness and desire me with all your heart. Then for you, I will be all that you desire. He relates how Mevlana encouraged him to fast, saying, the faithful one is like a flute. His voice is beautiful when his stomach is empty. Have an empty stomach like the flute, and cry out in longing. Speak mysteries like the pen. And as it is said, spend on others what God has provided for you as sustenance. Die to self, be empty, be filled with that one, sharing that. We're also reminded of the story when Sultan Veled was about 20 and yearning to take time in retreat. And that finally Mevlana gave his permission, and all the lights that opened for Sultan Veled, and how he heard a voice saying that all sins will be forgiven, except turning away from me. For I am your beloved. And he tells us how Mevlana cried out and began to whirl, as did the other friends, in an overflowing of joy and ecstasy. Sultan Veled relates that it was his grandmother, the great Kira of Samarkand, who had encouraged Mevlana in the love of Sema. But it was Shams of Tabriz who, according to the records of Aflaki, taught him to turn in a circle, witnessing the oneness. Throughout his youth, Sultan Veled witnessed many semas, some lasting a week or even 40 days. He too was devoted to that way of celebration of the divine, and in later years always stood in its defense, this joyful worship of God through music, poetry, and twirling. In the words of the Saga Ilahi of Sultan Veled, Sema Safa Jana Shiva Ruha Kidadir. Sema is a joy, health for the soul, food for the spirit. Sultan Veled was intimately familiar with mystical states. He was often present near his father when he was deeply immersed in worship. He recounts the depths of zikr, how one night, he says, my father was saying his prayers and I was seated beside him. My father stood and said, Allah, Allah, Allah, over and over. And after a while I saw that his blessed mouth was open, but his lips were no longer moving. The words, Allah, Allah, were coming from a place deep within his chest. He says, my father opened to me the way of fulfillment. He reminds us of Mevlana's reflection, and God grants sustenance to whom he wills, beyond all reckoning. This refers to those who are the inheritors of the light of Islam, the light of surrender. We have built pavilions of love in eternity, Mevlana said. It was through that love that Mevlana conveyed Sultan Veled as a student to Shams. And as Mevlana had told him, referring to Hazrati Shams, "O my son, a fakir might bestow just a glance upon you, but this glance can take you to the highest heaven." The sweetness of humility increases the flow of grace. Sultan Veled told us, one day my father gave a passionate speech praising Mevlana Shamsuddin's greatness. He spoke about his miracles in such a way that I was overjoyed to hear his words about my sheikh, and went running to Master Shamsuddin's cell and took his hand and kissed his hand and rubbed it with my eyes. And Shamsuddin said, "Oh, Bahayuddin, you don't do this even to people of the way." But I said to him how Mevlana had spoken of his greatness, and that it had made us all crazy with love. And that even if I were to live 1,000 years and were devotedly in your service 100 times over, this soul would not be able to fulfill its obligation. My father's words would resonate forever in my heart. It was Sultan Veled who was moving between the worlds, translating, bearing witness to the mysteries shared by Mevlana and Shams, soothing those who were jealous of their time together or missing Mevlana when he was immersed in retreat, bridging communication with the friends. On one occasion, they were immersed in retreat for 6 months, and it was only Sultan Veled and Salahuddin who were able to enter. And that they were, as it says in the Quran, God will exalt by many degrees those of you who have attained to faith, and above all, such as have been entrusted with true knowledge. And God grants sustenance to whom he wills beyond all reckoning. وَتَرْزُقُ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. And we have been reminded how when Shams disappeared, it was Sultan Veled whom Mevlana sent to Damascus in search of him. And how when he was bringing Shams back to Konya, that even though Shams invited him to ride, he said, no, it's not fitting for the king and the slave to ride together. And that Sultan Veled walked on foot, leading the horse of Shams back all the way from Damascus. And that Shams reflected, if a mystic gives his heart, he will receive love, like those described in the Quran, people whom he loves and who love him. I have seen nothing more beautiful than humility. On that long journey back from Damascus with Shams, it is said that Shams shared many mysteries. through the grace of Sultan Veled, his children and descendants. The depiction of this journey has become an essential part of the Mevlevi whirling ceremony. In the Devri Veled, the majestic procession at the beginning of the ceremony, reminding us of the seeker's journey and the journey of the soul from the moment of creation, from that breath through the states of matter into the embodiment of the human being who has the capacity to become the true Khalifa of God, empty of self, filled with the beloved. Through the unfolding of the turning, aware of the threshold between the two worlds, of the manifest and the unseen, with the right hand raised to receive blessing, and the left bestowing that grace, flowing through the heart, each samazan assists in bringing intensified blessing into this world. Shams once said, Mevlana is like a diver who throws himself into the deep sea, and I am the merchant who buys his pearls. Sultan Veled assisted in the conveyance of those pearls to us, and with Mevlana and Shams demonstrates how to become pearl divers ourselves. When Sultan Veled and Shams returned to Konya, with great joy, Shams spoke to Mevlana and the friends about the beautiful humility of Sultan Veled and the conversations they shared, and how he had given his head in the way of Mevlana, but he had conveyed his secret to Sultan Veled. And he said, even if Baha'u'ddin lived as long as Noah, spending his life in devotion and ascetic practice, I couldn't transmit all of my knowledge to him. I hope he receives some of it also from you, lives to be very old, and becomes a great sheikh, if it pleases God. After Shams and Mevlana's passing, it's related that when the Mongol emperor, Baykatu Khan, met Sultan Veled, he was so impressed with the profundity and elegance of his teaching that with all sincerity of soul, he declared himself a disciple, and Sultan Veled put the Mevlevi Sikhe on his head and helped to save Konya from his ravages. They made a pilgrimage to Mevlana's tomb, and at the time of the noon prayer, Sultan Veled began a sema, saying, "Let go of this world, because it doesn't belong to you. The breath you breathe is not according to your will. If you breathe, it is with God's help. If you happen to gather wealth, don't take pride in it. And your life, remember, it doesn't belong to you." Little by little, a way based on the beautiful teachings of Mevlana and Shams evolved. Sultan Veled welcomed others into this way, a way of love, humility, and service. He relates that Mevlana taught him the speech of paradise. O Baha'u'ddin, if you wish to live in paradise forever, be a friend to everyone. Do not hold resentment in your heart. When you speak with goodwill about others, you'll always be happy. And this happiness is paradise itself. Yet when moments do occur in our lives, when even with those we most love, conflict may arise, Sultan Veled demonstrates how important it can be to be willing to take the first step in reconciliation with love. As his teacher Sam of Tabriz used to say, intellect ties us in knots, but love dissolves those tangles. And when a disagreement arose between Sultan Veled and his beloved son, Arif Chalabi, it was Sultan Veled who reached out to him, asking a friend to intercede and invite him to a meal. And when they met at his father's tomb, Sultan Veled embraced him and said, "Those whose feet are firmly planted have rejoined the way of conversation and haven't washed their hands of their friends, just because a little dust has fallen. No one has ever appeared on this earth without the dust of a fault on his cheek. And when Arif Çelebi was too embarrassed to eat in front of his father, Sultan Veled withdrew to the balcony and said, "Go ahead, share the sema. Just speak a little so I can hear and share your joy." And the sema opened like the night of power, whose beauty is like 1,000 months. Sultan Veled also reminds us it's not just in ecstatic worship and an immersion in inner states that we serve our sustainer, but through our work and service in the world. And there are beautiful stories about that I hope you'll have a chance to read one day. He tells us, "My father said, O Baha'u'ddin, when the seed of my teaching has taken root in your heart, you will understand. Reflect deeply on my teaching. Really try to absorb it. And if you do, felicity will be yours." He was absorbed in the mystery described in the Quran. Have you not looked within? There is nothing in the world that exists outside yourself. Look into the depths of your being for that for which you are longing. He tells us, look for God and love him because he's necessary to all creatures. Noble messengers came to make God's abundance known and to encourage human beings to obey, serve, and adore him. His obedient servants take joy in serving him and thus progress in the levels of being. The efforts Sultan Veled made, both on the inner and outer, have helped to bring us the gifts of the unseen, establishing a way of love, flowing from the inspiration of Mevlana and Shams, enhanced by his own deep knowing and purity of being, encouraging us to open our inner sight, that one might be seen through us. May we also dive into that sea of love and bring forth pearls of the unseen, of the heart, to the shores of this existence to share, reminding each other of the infinite radiance of that love. As it's expressed in this tradition, may this moment be blessed. May the hearts of the lovers be opened. Gulubi ashikan kushadiola. By the breath of our master Mevlana, by the secret of Shams and Veled, by the generosity of Imam Ali, and the blessings and intercession of our noble prophet, Muhammad, may we say hu, hu.
Efendim, Hazreti Mevlana, Sultan Veled ve bu kafilenin, diğer mensuplarının, yolcularının temsil ettikleri hakikat her dem tazedir. Her dem insanların ihtiyaçlarına cevap verecek potansiyele sahiptir. Yunus'un dediği gibi her dem yeni doğarız, bizden kim usanası. İşte bu her dem taze olan hakikatin okyanusun ta öbür tarafından, Kaliforniya'dan bir güzel insana yansımasını görüyoruz. Helminski hanımefendi bu duygulu konuşmasını yaptı. Kendisine teşekkür ediyoruz. Keşke hepinizde kulaklıklar olsaydı da sözlerini daha yakından takip edebilseydiniz. Ben bu salonda daha evvel birkaç defa konuştum. Günün bu saatinde çok da dolu değilse de bu kadar doluluğa daha evvel pek rastlamadım. Onun için dinleyici olarak sizlere de teşekkür ediyorum. 4. oturum burada sona eriyor. Sağ olun, var olun efendim.